Hey, dear listeners, welcome back to another powerful episode of Mind Over Masculinity, the podcast where we stop telling men to man up and just start asking them what would it look like to actually feel safe in your body, in your mind, and yes, in your digital life. Yeah. Because here's the plot twist that nobody warned us about, which is the modern protector role is not just about physical strength anymore. It's all about the discernment and it's all about the boundaries. It's about not getting emotionally hijacked by a text that looks like it's from my kid, your boss, your bank, or your own brain at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., right? And for this, today we got the one and only lovely guest. Please welcome Robert Siciliano. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, before we delve deep into the discussion today, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Robert. So, Robert is a cybersecurity expert, private investigator, CSP, and he's also the creator of the Strategic Human Firewall, aka the framework that says stop treating security like boring compliance and make it instinct, make it personal, and with AI deepfakes and the perfect lies popping up, Roberts basically here to help us not get played by digital Frankensteins. So he's Boston based and a proud girl dad, and he rides an 87 Harley Davidson. Yeah, one of my dream bike, I would say. So, uh, yeah, I mean, we're all about to talk about the safety, identity, masculinity, trust, and what it means to protect what matters without living in paranoia. So, why to wait? Let's get started. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you so much. This is such an important topic that I love that we're aligning it with our well-being. Personal health, right? It is one of those subjects that people generally avoid. We don't necessarily want to think or believe that bad things would ever happen to us. That like a bad actor, like a predator, a thief. That they would choose us ever. Like it's just not something that comes top of mind. Nor do we make many efforts to proactively, deal with these things. We just say, oh, it really can't or won't happen to me, so I'm not really all that worried about it. And then we do nothing about it. And then when bad things happen, we're so surprised. Like we wonder why. Like why did they choose me? Like how did that happen?
Mhm.
And it's like we don't necessarily wonder why we get sick. We don't wonder, why our health might fail in some cases. I mean, it just happens, right? It's just, the nature of being a human. And security is not much different. These things, they do happen. Um, we don't want them to happen, but because, we live in a society and a culture that not everybody that you come in contact with is worthy of your trust. There are people out there that just their nature is such that they're predatory, and we refer to them as sociopaths, psychopaths, and they're out there. I would say that in the course of my life and the research that I've done, that probably 97% of all the people that I have met or you will ever meet, and in the course of our lives, 97% of us are good. We're trustworthy. But there is that small percentage, and I think it is too is as much as 3% that are just not worthy of our trust. That there's something about them that whether it's nature or nurture, um, they just they don't know other than do harm. That's just their nature. And so it's up to us, just like, you know, getting a good night's sleep and nourishing your body with good foods and making an effort to make better choices in regards to our health. that we need to make similar choices in regards to our personal security,
Mhm.
you know? And here's the thing, like it's not being a girl dad, right?
Mhm.
It's not just me that I'm responsible for. It's my loved ones. It's my spouse, it's my girls. Um so I have a, a a higher responsibility that goes beyond just me. And I have to be thoughtful in that regard. I have to look at, my situation, my circumstance, the home that I live in, the location of where that house is, the crime climate of the region in which I live in, and then the risks that we all face, daughters going off to college, home potentially being burglarized. I mean, that does happen, right? Millions of homes are burglarized every single year,
Mhm.
and identities are compromised, and data is breached, and credit cards are compromised. And so, like, I've got to look at all these various mitigating issues and decide, okay, so what systems am I going to put in place to 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 reduce risk, to become a tougher target? And I think about these things because it means something and it matters to me. I have what would be considered an appreciation for security, a higher appreciation for security. And that's what I try to instill in my listeners or my audience. I speak for a living. I get in front of live audiences all the time. And when they people are attending my presentation, they generally come in with the preconceived notion as to what this dialogue is going to be, what we're going to talk about. And they think that, we're going to talk about hackers, attackers, and thieves and password management. And we're going to talk about, your data being compromised and your credit cards being stolen. And here are all the things that you're supposed to do. And they're right. We do talk about that stuff. However, leading up to that, leading up to the do these different things, or and don't do these do different things, and put these systems in place, and leading up to that discussion that revolves around security awareness.
Yeah.
Prior to that, we talk about, what security is and what security isn't. Like, you mentioned paranoia at one point, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And paranoia is one of those life circumstance. It's actually a mental health issue
Mhm.
that too many people, unfortunately, are afflicted with. And paranoia is a frame of mind that many people, is in this culture, many people believe that
Mhm.
if you engage in security practices, if you engage in security practices, that you must be paranoid, that you must live in fear, you must worry that people are out to get you, and so forth. And
Mhm.
I find that in a culture that deflects and associates security as a form of paranoia, I
Mhm.
think what that truly means is that we don't fully understand or appreciate the value that security provides in our life. That this misnomer, this cultural myth that we've attributed to security, which is paranoia, I think that's a mistake. I think that's a false belief. I think that what that boils down to is that
Mhm.
we prefer to function in a certain level of denial that these things can't happen to us. And when we function in that certain level of denial that these things can't or won't happen to me,
Mhm.
then we deflect and say, oh, people who just engage in security, they're just paranoid.
Mhm.
And that deflection, that denial, it makes us kind of feel good that we don't have to engage in security, because only people that are paranoid do stuff like that. They're the ones that have to engage in security because there's something wrong with them. And and I think that from my experience, I see that corporations that don't properly position what security is and what security isn't, if all
Mhm.
they're doing is engaging in what we call phishing simulation training, they're not really they're not really emotionally facilitating the proper mindset for what security is and ultimately what security isn't. And those employees, they're not going to engage in security awareness, never mind security appreciation effectively. And that phishing simulation training just ultimately kind of falls in its face. So yeah, it's much like health, it's much like wellness. And if we treat security with that frame of mind, I think that holistically we'll engage in security practices much more effectively.
That's great. So Robert, like, I mean, I really love that you shared these things. And anyways, I not been able to get into the, so what we call this as a edge way. So anyways, I mean, what I was just saying, like what I was wanted to understand, like, because we are in mind over masculinity, right? So uh regarding the masculinity, pride, getting scammed, uh why do smart men, according to you, I mean, why do smart men still fall for it? I mean, uh, a lot of men won't admit that they got tricked because it feels humiliating. But why do capable and intelligent people still fall for the scams? And what you say, like, how triggering is shame in this space? What do you say?
Yeah, that's a an interesting take on that. I see that when ego gets in the way, right? It gets in the way of being well thought out. It gets in the way of recognizing vulnerability, right? And I think humans are all, to a degree, vulnerable for one reason or the other. We're vulnerable emotionally. We're vulnerable, um, physically, to ill health or to others, right? We're a vulnerable species. Um, we're capable certainly, but we're also subject to um, the whims of life, and that could be somebody else's bad intentions. It could be a virus or a bacteria that takes you down and gives you the flu, right? And so vulnerability and risk are kind of one and the same. If you recognize risk, if you recognize your own fallibility, your own vulnerability, then you are consciously recognizing that, okay, so with this risk, with this vulnerability, if I want to mitigate that, if I want to reduce it, if I want to do something or anything to protect myself, then I need to make different or better decisions, right? And that, again, it could be with um, health. It could be with the foods that we choose. It could be how much we do or don't exercise. It could be, as far as mental health, it might be the people that we associate with or the information that we consume. If you're constantly consuming the news every day, the bad news, it's going to affect your mental health. And it's the same thing with security. If you're if you're consuming information that informs you as to how to mitigate or reduce risk, different tips and tricks regarding, let's just say, basics, right? Password management. Password management is one of those things that if you're not doing it properly, then you make yourself and your bank account and your in some cases your family and certainly your employer at high risk, and by engaging in this simple process of managing passwords, recognizing that, you know, your way may not be the best way, which is like, using the same passcode across multiple accounts, let's say, then you're recognizing your own vulnerability. You're recognizing risk. You're recognizing that you may not have all the answers. And anyone who recognizes that they don't have all the answers is recognizing that they're vulnerable, Like I know myself, using myself as an example, if I go back to my early 20s, even mid 20s, there was a time in my life when I thought I had all the answers. I thought that there was a time in my life when I thought I pretty much know everything, right? They say hire a teenager while they know everything, right? Kind of jokingly. And like there was a time in my life where my ego, I thought that I knew everything, that I had all the answers, that you couldn't really tell me anything because I already knew. And that's just ego. That is really just someone who is not living consciously. That's somebody who's not well thought out. That's somebody who's just frankly mistaken. And I think that, like, when we um don't recognize that we don't have all the answers, I think that that is a direct correlation to shame. That we uh, don't want to let anyone else view us as less than, as not having all the answers, as not having it 100% together. And that's just ego. And that is a direct correlation to shame. And that's an unfortunate mindset that many men um, live in, you know, and
Yeah.
they fail to recognize their own fallibility or vulnerability. And I think that that puts them and others in their life at further forms of risk.
Um, Understood. So, here, because we are talking about the ego part as well. So, like, I totally agree with you. Like, during our teenage times, or maybe, in the 30s, sometimes as well. Like, sometimes we feel that, yes, like, suppose someone is speaking, so two-person are talking together, and the other person, when they are saying something, before they complete, I'm sure that I know, like, what they wanted to talk about, and I know the answer as well. So um so how do you see, I mean, is it the total ego part, or is it something the confidence as well? Because I see sometimes it is a confidence where, yes, because no one knows 100% correct, right? So every one of us learns from the scenarios, from the daily life, from the examples in our life we go through. So how do you, I mean, differentiate these two perspectives?
Well, the question is, do we really learn from these examples? Do we really take in the right information and uh, learn from, say, heartache or headache or adversity? And many of us, well, don't. Many of us don't take these life lessons and properly filter them. I think what often happens is, when something does happen, whatever it might be, often many, 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 unfortunately, many people, millions, billions,
Mhm.
they deflect and they blame others. So they don't necessarily take personal responsibility for certain things that might occur in their life, that they find it easier to deflect and blame others for a certain circumstance, for what might have happened. And they don't look at what decisions that they might have made that might have led them to this place, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the reasons that prevents people from, what we would consider self-actualization, right? They never really, fully mature. They never fully grow into themselves. They never fully recognize, you know, who they are. And, you know, I know, like, a lot of our conversation is, like, somewhat metaphysical, but that's fine because, that such is life, right? In security touches upon all of that stuff. Like, Abraham Maslow's, hierarchy of human needs, at the base of the triangle are our physiological needs. Consuming fluids and foods and nourishment and getting a good night's rest. And then right above that is safety, stability, structure, protection. And then And then right above that is, love and belongingness needs and self-actualization. Like all of that all matters and means something, and it's all part of the process. And you can't achieve one effectively without the other being satisfied. And security is right there above, getting a good night's rest and nourishing your body with good foods. If you are ever to achieve, a level of, again, self-actualization, you have to have your safety and security needs in order.
I agree. I totally agree with you. And it's all like, as I mentioned about in the beginning, that from life we learn, but yes, sometimes we take it very casually. And yes, again, it differs man to man. And um, what I also feel sometimes is like it is, again, uh, it's my perspective that yes, we go through a lot of things into our life, into our daily life, good, bad, emotion, and a lot of things we goes through, and we yes we learn it, but sometimes we make it uh, ourselves so casual that we just overlook those scenarios, those learnings, and maybe that is one of the reason it uh, led us lead us to a situation which we call it kind of that we got into a trap. So that is my perspective, but yes, thank you so much for sharing that. uh, and also, like, the scenarios which I was also talking about. So if someone already got into this, so how do you suggest, what do you suggest will be kind of the next steps that they should take, so that in their life, in future, they can overcome all these challenges?
It's about being proactive. It's about putting various systems in place. It's
Mhm.
about understanding risk, and that
Mm,
the likelihood of something bad happening to me or my loved ones or my business, the likelihood of something bad happening is it's kind of relatively slim, but there's a chance enough that if it
mhm,
was to happen, it could potentially be life altering. And so similarly, right, when we get in our vehicles every day, we make the habit of putting a seatbelt on.
mm,
And we put that seatbelt on because it's the smart thing to do. It gives us a level of control. And that level of control is designed to, at least in the vehicle, it's designed to keep you firmly in the driver's seat, so that you have control over the steering wheel and the gas and the brakes and so forth. Um, Personal security is just a form of control. Information
mm,
security, identity theft protection, cybersecurity in general is just a form of control. And it's a matter of just putting these various systems in place so that when the bad guys do come a calling, because they're targeting someone around the clock, 24/7, 365. And when the bad guys do come calling, that they see you as somebody who has these various systems in place. You've engaged in identity theft protection. You've engaged in something called the credit freeze. You've engaged in effective password management. You're using a different passcode across multiple accounts. You're
mm,
somebody who locks the doors to your home, and you might have a home security system, and you've even taken a self-defense class, and you've taught your loved ones, or maybe investment in self-defense class for your loved ones and so forth. Like, you do all these different things, you become this tougher target. And if you're proactive in that regard, and you've thought these things through, and you've gone from, basic security awareness to a level of security appreciation, where not only do you understand all these various risks, but you actually have made investments in all the various, skills in order to reduce that risk, because you appreciate security and the value it provides both personally and professionally. So if you are well thought out now and engage now and put these systems in place now, um, we don't necessarily have to even know what it means to be a victim or experience victimization. And nobody wants that, of course. But being well thought out and thought through and taking action now is how you prevent anything bad from happening in the future.
Agree. Right. And also, like this show is all about the masculinity and the mental health. So if men get taught that don't be paranoid and trust people, but overall, over the internet is literally built to trust or built to exploit trust. So how do we stay open hearted while still having the tight boundaries? So what is this?
Certainly, we as humans trust by default. And what that means is the human being is a interdependent species. And what that means is, of course, that we are dependent upon each other for our survival to the point, of procreation. And without that fundamental requirement for trust, without fundamentally trusting each other, uh, the species would fail to exist, right? So pretty much most people, from the moment they get out of bed to the moment they go to bed, we pretty much give the benefit of the doubt all day, every day. We pretty much trust the people that we meet or come in contact with. When the phone rings, when we get an email, when we get a text message, we are pretty much giving the benefit of the doubt on a regular basis. And we need to do that. Like, that is not an option to not pretty much give the benefit of the doubt. However, there is there is a consideration that trust is kind of overrated, that we kind of trust maybe too much, that we might give the benefit of the doubt a bit too much. And so I think it's okay that we kind of scale that back a little bit and recognize that any person that you meet, any email that you receive or phone call you get or text message you get, that there needs to be a level of acknowledgement that not every single communication, not every single person that you come in contact with is in fact worthy of your trust. And like I had said that earlier, that probably 97% of the people that we'll ever meet are in fact worthy of your trust, but about 2 to 3% are not. And I would say that we can probably equate that to, say 3% of our regular interactions. That if you are a bit more, I guess, scrutinous of each and every transaction, not to the point where you worry or you live in fear or you consider yourself paranoid, but you are acknowledging risk regularly, similarly to when you get into the vehicle, you put your seatbelt on because you're recognizing risk. Well, recognize risk when the phone rings, recognize risk when you get a text message or an email, recognize risk when you are coming in contact with people that are making financial requests of you. And if you have a healthy sense and healthy level of um, risk, I don't know that it's going to negatively detract from your life experience. If anything, I think it can increase your awareness and increase your appreciation for security and increase your ability to ward off, um, you know, potential bad actors.
Exactly. Exactly. That's really lovely. Amazing. So it's basically like protect your peace and your passports in the same sentence. So lovely. So, all right, listeners, like before we get into the last section of our episode, I I would just like to share you a mini challenge for a week. So maybe a 60-second reality check that before you respond to any urgent message, money, fear, family, threats, take 1 minute, breathe, then verify using a second channel. Like call the person, use a known number, ask a question only. I mean, they didn't know. Because the future is not about being scared, it's all about being awake. Calm is a security tool. Boundaries are a love language, and verification is not a kind of distrust, but it's a leadership, right? So, if this episode helped you, please share it with one person who always too confident to get scammed. So, like exactly who I mean, and drop a review. It's the simplest way to help this mission reach more men who deserve support and not the shame. So, Robert, if someone wants to connect with you, what would be the great medium to connect?
I'm easy to find online at all the various socials. I am Robert Siciliano, Siciliano. If you want to find my website, easy enough. It is protectnowllc.com. Protectnowllc.com.
Amazing, amazing. So, dear listeners, what I'll do is I'll put all the links into the show notes for your easy reference. And with this hope, this is Mind Over Masculinity, and with your host Avik. And Robert, thank you so much for bringing the heat and making the security feel human. So, for everyone who is listening, protect your identity, protect your mind, protect your people, and do it with clarity, not the chaos. So, see you in the next episode. Thank you so much.